You guys ever watch that D&D cartoon? You know, the one where it's that goofy looking dungeon master and they fight Tiamat in like the first episode? Yeah, wild stuff. But if you look at this party, you've got all your classic roles filled. The magician, the thief, the ranger, and the cavalier, or better known as the tank. It's the first thing that people think of when they imagine a D&D party. Everyone knows that the classic D&D party needs these archetypes. Everyone, and I mean everyone, including their father's best friend named Greg, knows that a D&D party needs a tank. Someone to shrug off hits and distract enemies, keeping the squishies safe. The stereotypical version of this role usually consists of high armor classes, loads and loads of hit points, and some ability to mitigate damage. While this proves successful in video games, movies, and even earlier editions of tabletop role-playing games, current 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is actually non-conducive to a true tanking experience. Don't believe me? Well, in this essay, I will... No, that's overused. I mean, let's just get into it. We haven't even gotten to the intro sequence yet. Right, let's start with the basics. What makes a tank a good tank? Well, your typical D&D tank classes are your barbarians, your fighters, your monks, and paladins. Now, don't get me wrong, other classes can fill that role as well, but we're just going to stick with these guys for now. Well, what makes these classes better at tanking, you ask? Well, all of them, except for monks, but we can ignore that for now, have the highest available hit die among classes. Barbarians boast a D12, while fighters and paladins have D10s. This gives them a massive hit pool, allowing them to take more hits compared to spellcasters like wizards and sorcerers. They also typically have higher armor classes, with monks and barbarians using their unarmored defenses, while fighters and paladins get access to heavy armor, giving them a base 16 AC with just default starting armor. This is before any shields, which they also have proficiency in, or any other boosts like the defense fighting style. On top of that, paladins get lay on hands for some quick healing, fighters get second wind, monks get quickened healing, which isn't that good, but that's a whole nother discussion, we'll get into it later, and barbarians get rage, having all non-magical damage. Wow, these seem like perfect tanks. You must be thinking to yourself, they're hard to hit, and even when you do hit them, it doesn't matter, because they can take it. This must mean that they're super easy classes to tank with, right? Wrong. I can't believe you thought that. That's very, very silly of you. Okay, that was mean. I'm sorry. Please just let me know you forgive me in the comments. I didn't mean to come off as mean, but allow me to explain my reasoning first. So before we get into D&D, let's take a step back, take a look at tanks and other media. I personally know very little about most MMOs, RPGs, and other games like that. That's the other guy on the channel. One I do know a little too much about is Paladins. It's an Overwatch parallel. A few years ago, I definitely did not sink way too many hours into that game. But if I did, I would tell you that I absolutely love playing tanks in games like these, and it's clear why. So what makes tanks in Paladins and Overwatch and other games feel so much more impactful, you ask? So satisfying to play? Well, it's all in an ability they have, crowd control. See, tanking isn't just about taking hits, you see, it's about way, way more, and these games really make you feel like you're making a difference. Look at Makoa from Paladins and Roadhog from Overwatch, who both have a hook that can temporarily immobilize an enemy and reposition them, keeping both your squishies safe if they get in your back lines, or throwing them up for your high damage healers to let them do their thing. Then there's Reinhardt and Fernando, which have a rechargeable shield capable of defending their whole team, a charge ability, and a stun or a knockback ability. Once again, their impact is more than just about getting hit. They're a wall for their allies and can reposition enemies. Anar from Paladins has a slow ability. Osira has a displacement ability. You get the idea. I could go on forever. They've all got some form of crowd control and rechargeable shields or armor. Make sure that they just don't take hits, but if the people you're fighting are not paying them any attention, they'll get majorly punished for doing so. Playing a tank feels impactful when you play. They aren't just a meat shield. They're a valuable member of the team. And that doesn't even mention the boy Winton. Now, obviously, Paladins and Overwatch play vastly different than your typical D&D game. You're not normally doing PvP, you're not pushing a payload or defending a checkpoint. I get it. But I'm pretty sure in both, you're still completing quests and facing hordes of enemies. Intelligent enemies controlled by a probably intelligent DM. I don't know your DM. This right here is where you really start to feel the problem with tanking in Dungeons & Dragons. Any semi-intelligent creature will see the guy who is either hard to hit or hard to kill and ignore them completely, focusing on disabling and dismantling the squishy nukes embodied by your typical warlocks, sorcerers, wizards, etc. You get the idea. A good DM running a monster that isn't just a creature with an intelligence of less than 3 will take out the spellcasters first, and smart enemies won't even waste resources on something they don't perceive as a threat. That's the problem. Tanks in D&D are just not able to do the other two parts of the job. Sure, they can take hits, but when it comes to protecting their buddies and distracting the enemies, they are severely lacking. This leaves tanks as more of a liability in combat, since they are unable to do their jobs. Now, this isn't saying that tanks are weak in combat. That's a whole different essay, which is, spoiler alert by the way, I didn't mean to reveal that to you, but anyway. That being said, their damage output is negligible when compared to that of a spellcaster. And to get the damage even close to being on par, you're wasting more resources than a spellcaster would, and compromising your ability to actually do the job you signed up for. But I'm getting sidetracked on a different rant. I'll make sure to bring the same energy for that rant later. Now, with all that being said, tanking is not literally impossible in D&D. Nothing is literally impossible. Obviously, that was made by some clickbaity thumbnail guy who's trying to get you to click on this video and the endless expanse of the YouTube algorithm. And it worked. You're here, aren't you? But there are ways around this, not talking about the thumbnail thing. Some examples that come to mind are feats, like Sentinel to prevent repositioning, Mage Slayer to take care of those pesky spellcasters, Alert allows you to get the jump on everyone, and even Grappler to keep those spellcasters' arms pinned down. There's also certain subclass features like Ancestral Guardians, Ancestral Protectors, or the Cavalier's Unwavering Mark ability to help provide a bit more control when you're on the battlefield. Options like these can allow for your tanks to feel useful, while also keeping those squishy spellcasters protected from harm. I'm looking at you, Wizard. And there are way more than I've mentioned, but they come at a cost some people are not willing to pay. Maybe you don't want your Barbarian to be an Ancestral Guardian. Maybe you think you'd have more fun if your Shifter was a Beast Barbarian because it's more thematic. Or what about if you end up taking those feats I mentioned earlier? Now you're wasting limited resources, which is your ability score improvements, for niche effects, sacrificing a boost to your damage or maybe even your own survivability, both of which may hinder your ability to protect those you love, or tolerate. I know how some of you parties can be. But there's also fighters, which you get a ton. It doesn't even matter if you take feats. I mean, I guess that's just D&D balance for you. Okay, now let's say you followed everything you needed to do, and your tank is doing its job in combat, or as well as it best can because your high-level intelligent beholder enemy knows to leave you alone, and you've had to choose between health and utility. It's a liability. So to try and best make up for it, you've min-maxed, making your character somewhat viable. This means that you've almost certainly kept your social stats lower, your wisdoms, your intelligence, your charisma, and now this character is also a liability outside of combat. Not really a liability, but you know what I mean. They can't contribute as much socially as one failed skill check can turn a friendly interaction with your local soap merchant into a worldwide manhunt for a loose arsonist. But that's an extreme example, but it's guaranteed that's happened before. Don't ask me to tell that story, please. So if playing a tank is so bad, you ask, then why not drop them completely and just play a Blade Singer or a Hexblade or a College of Swords? You know, something that is actually viable. Well, here's where I've got to make a quick pivot. It's not that tanks aren't viable, they 100% are. I know I've been harping on this for God knows how long now, but I need to clarify something. In the right hands, a champion fighter is better than any spellcaster, halfcaster, or any other character. If you know how to position properly, get the 1 to 2 feats that can make a tank into a force, and have some support from your casters, a tank can be unstoppable. Now that may sound like a ton of ifs, ands, and buts, but that's just how it is. I can't do anything about it, I'm just a guy on YouTube. But I promise you, tanking can be done properly and well in the right hands. And here's the other thing. Smart DMs could avoid wasting all the resources on tanks, but that doesn't mean they won't let their tanks shine. But I guarantee you that every good DM will make sure every player should be having fun regardless. And that includes your basic John Smith human fighter champion. Take it personally from me. Every game I play the tank. Even when my friends and party members groan about how boring I am. It's how I enjoy playing the game. From maxing out my health and my melee and castle crashers, to filling the tank role in Paladins, to bum rushing everything in Jedi Fallen Order. It's just more entertaining for myself to run and gun, take hits and do damage versus doing some setup and some spellcasting. And there are people out there just like that, just like me. That's right. I've been an undercover tank player this whole time, and I've been right under your noses. Except when I said that I main tanks earlier in the video, just ignore that part and pretend like this is the big reveal. Remember, we aren't all the end-all be-all opinion on D&D. Heck, I bet we don't even crack the top 10. But here's a little hint. No one is. It's your game. It doesn't matter if you play an unoptimized character, because the best part of Dungeons & Dragons is really what you should be optimizing, which is how much fun you and your friends are having around a table playing the game, or perhaps a virtual screen. However you play, as long as you're having fun and enjoying it, that's all that matters. If you enjoy playing a tank, play a tank. How's that for a conclusion, huh? Not so bad for a tank man with DM trust issues. Okay, now it's the part of the video where I say a lot of things. Do you agree with us, or maybe you disagree with us? Just want to say that you're also a tank main? Maybe you've got some sort of homebrew ruling that fixes this whole issue. Maybe you hate tanks and you hate me and you think my opinion is stupid and you just want to let me know. Regardless, be sure to let us know your opinions down below. We absolutely love hearing what you have to say. On top of that, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss another Natural One post. And as always, keep those dice rolling, and we'll catch you on the flip side.